WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Accra, Dakar, 1 p.m. in Lagos and Port Novo. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Top of the stories. Open Society Foundations decries declining principles of democratic practice in Africa as the world marks International Democracy Day.
So democracy, in its very simplistic, one would say, formulation, let's borrow Abraham Lincoln's, the government of the people, by the people, for the people, has actually, in practice, tended to become a government of politicians, by politicians, for politicians.
University of Liberia reaffirms ban on student politics amid rising campus violence. Sahel State Alliance marks 2 years with mixed security outcomes.
To be fair, there was a time that the situation was under control. We applauded those gains. But shortly after, hostilities resumed, almost by magic, leading to losses of lives. That must also be acknowledged.
Togo summons EU ambassador after European Parliament demands release of Abdulaziz Goma. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. The world today is commemorating International Democracy Day with the aim of upholding democratic principles such as inclusion and freedom of expression. This year's theme, ensuring effective governance of AI at all levels, highlights the growing importance of artificial intelligence in shaping democratic processes and governance nationwide or worldwide. In view of this, the United Nations is calling for stronger global commitment to democracy, warning that it is increasingly under attack from disinformation, political division, and shrinking civic space. According to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, democracy draws its strength from the voices and choices of the people and must remain a force for dignity, inclusion, and peace.
Democracy is powered by the will of the people, by their voices, their choices, and their participation. It thrives when the human rights and fundamental freedoms of all are upheld, especially the most vulnerable. A democracy that excludes is not democracy at all. To those who seek to discredit or undermine democracy, I say this: I lived under the dictatorship, and along with many others, I helped rebuild democracy in Portugal. I know the difference. Today, as we mark 18 years of this International Day and 20 years of the UN Democracy Fund, we honor the courage of people everywhere who are shaping their societies through dialogue, participation, and trust. At a time when democracy and the rule of law are under assault from disinformation, division, and shrinking civic space, these efforts are more vital than ever. The United Nations itself is a forum for dialogue, rooting in the opening words of our Charter, we the peoples. This is a powerful reminder that our legitimacy and purpose derive from those we serve. Let us reaffirm democracy as a force for dignity, inclusion, and peace, and work together to ensure it delivers for all.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, meanwhile, speaking in Accra, Ghana today during the launch of a report by the Open Society Foundation's OSF titled Analysis of the Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice in Africa. The Executive Director with the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, and Chair of Ghana's Constitutional Review Committee, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, expressed worry about the declining principles of democratic practices in Africa.
So the politicians want your vote, not your well-being, right? So democracy, in its very simplistic, one would say, formulation, let's borrow Abraham Lincoln's, the government of the people, by the people, for the people, has actually, in practice, tended to become a government of politicians, by politicians, for politicians. So laws and policies are routinely made with little public participation. Once you vote, that's it, right? Another 4, 5, 6 years, you have to sit and be a spectator practically, right? Critical natural resources and state assets are contracted away under certificates of urgency, bypassing public consultation and engagement. And as we are reminded, if you are not at the table, you are likely to be on the menu. So if you're not participating in the key decisions about your resources, if you're not really there, if you're not being consulted, if huge contracts are being made overnight, parliamentarians are forced to sit and pass.
And that the Executive Director with the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, and Chair of Ghana's Constitutional Review Committee, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. Away from matters of democracy and to the Sahel, tomorrow, Tuesday, September 16, 2025, will mark 2 years since the creation of the Alliance of the Sahel State, AES. The bloc, made up of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, was formed after the 3 military-led countries withdrew from ECOWAS. One of its central missions is the fight against terrorism, improve security and socio-economic welfare of its citizens. On the security front, the record remains mixed, with as reflected in the streets of Niamey, Niger. Nade Tete reports.
According to Bounty Diallo, a Nigerian security analyst, some progress has been made in the fight against terrorism since the alliance was established.
Over the past 2 years, a tremendous amount of work has been accomplished. Unfortunately, it is the hostile media that set the tone, not our own. At home, people seem to prefer silence, even though important efforts are clearly being made.
However, several observers note setbacks in security. Amadou Haruna Meiga, Nigerian coordinator of the National Committee for Peace, Security and Social Cohesion, says gains have not been sustained.
To be fair, there was a time that the situation was under control. We applauded those gains. But shortly after, hostilities resumed, almost by magic, leading to losses of lives. That must also be acknowledged.
For many citizens, concern still lingers. Bashir Ganda, a resident of Niamey, says insecurity continues to cast a shadow 2 years after the alliance's creation.
Just the day before yesterday, Tillaberi town was attacked. If jihadists can now access major towns like Tillaberi, it raises real concerns about insecurity and what is being said about the Sahel States Alliance.
The Alliance for Sahel States was created on September 16, 2023, when Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger signed the Liptako Guruma Charter, establishing a permanent alliance and formalizing their withdrawal from ECOWAS.
Niamey's correspondent Mutala Zubairu's report and presented by Nade Tete. In Togo, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has summoned the European Union ambassador to Lomé, following a resolution adopted by the European Parliament demanding the release of Abdulaziz Goma, an Irish citizen. Goma has been in detention since 2018 on charges of conspiracy against the internal security of the state and the criminal association. He is accused of participating in a banned opposition protest in December 2018, For the Togolese authorities, the European Parliament's resolution amounts to blatant interference in a matter considered strictly judiciary and sovereign. Emo Edit has the details in this report.
The resolution by the European Parliament denounces what it describes as the arbitrary detention, acts of torture and unfair trial of Goma, who has now spent 7 years in Lomé civil prison. Members of the European Parliament, MEPs, demanded the annulment of his 10-year prison sentence handed down on February 3, 2025 by the Lomé Azize Court. Goma is an Irish citizen of Togolese origin. The European Parliament based its decision on the opinion of the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, which described the case as symptomatic of serious democratic backsliding in Togo, linked to the 2024 constitutional reform. The government's reaction was swift. On Friday, Foreign Affairs Minister Robert Duce summoned EU Ambassador Gwilym Sierra-Jones to denounce what he called blatant interference in a purely judicial and sovereign matter. According to Duce, Togolese justice, independent and in line with international standards, applied the law without undermining the accused's rights. He noted that Goma had access to appeal and medical follow-up, as confirmed by the National Human Rights Commission, CNDH. For Lomé, the European Parliament's resolution violates the principle of non-interference enshrined in the UN Charter and undermines the separation of powers. Goma has been on a hunger strike since August 27, 2025 to protest his detention conditions.
And that's CV Wadrago's report from Lomé, presented by Imo Edits.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Liberia at the moment, where the University of Liberia is facing renewed scrutiny after a recent surge in student violence prompted the Board of Trustees to reaffirm its decision to suspend all student political activities on campus. The move comes in response to disruption to academic life and ongoing clashes between students and the security personnel. According to a statement released by the Board of Trustees, incidents on September 1 and September 11 of this year resulted in disturbances at the Capitol Hill and Federal Campus. The board has directed the university's administration to immediately suspend all students involved in these incidents pending a thorough investigation in accordance with the student handbook. The university's administration is under pressure to restore calm and ensure a safe and conducive learning environment for all students. WADR's correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
This latest decision has left civil society groups raising concerns about the state of higher education in Liberia and the challenges universities face in balancing freedom of expression with the need for order and safety. The suspension of political activities has sparked debate among students and faculty, with some arguing that it infringes upon their rights to organize and express their views. The Student Unification Party says the Board of Trustees is operating illegally as its tenure has since expired. Speaking on the matter, Odysseus Moba, Secretary General of the Student Unification Party, said the student political group is now bothered about the decision and has promised to be active on its campuses.
If we are sick and tired of the consistent marginalization of the students of the University of Liberia, do you know what we go through? No one is concerned. But when we take the street to politics, they see us as those responsible for the crisis on the campuses of the University of Liberia. If we say morning, we'll be protesting. There will be a consistent protest. The reason we reach a point to say the president must leave the university is based on all these camps. We have been pushed to the wall. We have addressed this diplomatically and nothing has been achieved. The issue of infrastructure cannot be addressed. Buses are not available. Students are learning under extreme circumstances. If you say the students are responsible, it means you are not read history.
The Student Unification Party of recent has raised issues about the poor state of the university and at the same time called for the resignation of the university's president. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
In Mali, an envoy escorting fuel tanks was ambushed on Sunday morning on the Kai-Bamako highway between Lakamani and Kainera. The attack, claimed by Al-Qaeda-linked militants from a group for the support of Islam and Muslim, left several tankers bent after fighters set them ablaze. The Malian army says it responded forcefully and has launched swiping operations in the area. It is also urging the population to remain vigilant while assuring its commitment to securing Bamako-Dakar corridor. The incident comes just days after the army reported successfully escorting Senegalese fuel tanks without incident, an effort praised by Mali's truck drivers union, which has also called for stronger government support. With over 800 billion CFA francs of Senegal's exports transiting through Mali in 2024, the Dakar-Bamako route remains a vital economic lifeline for both countries. In Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama, through the Foreign Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, has called on Ghanaians who fled the recent conflict in Benyeri in the Savannah region to return home, assuring them that calm has been restored in the area. The Foreign Minister, who visited Ivankoro in Côte d'Ivoire to assess the living conditions of displaced Ghanaians, disclosed that the security has improved with more than 8,000 people already returning home. He urged the over 5,000 still in Côte d'Ivoire to follow suit. The ethnic clashes between the Gonja and Berefo communities in the Savannah region claimed at least 31 lives and displaced nearly 50,000 people. Over 13,000 fled to Côte d'Ivoire and about 1,000 into Burkina Faso. Relief efforts are ongoing, but aid agencies warn that conditions remain dire, with urgent need for shelter, food, and other medical care. Minister Ablakwa further announced that 6 million CFA francs has been donated to Ivorian government to support the displaced Ghanaians. He stressed that the welfare and safety of all Ghanaians worldwide remain a priority for the Mahama administration.
The message from President Mahama is that they should come back home. They should look at the situation with those who have returned. They are safe. They have not been compelled to run back here. About 8,000 of them have returned, and they are doing well. I was with them earlier when we drove through the communities, and they are doing fine. Right. So I've been assuring them that they should not be afraid. They should go back. President Mahama is expecting them to come back home. So we expect the latest census we did, 5,309, still here, and we expect all of them to return. But in the meantime, we'll make sure that those who are staying here receive the care. That's why President Mahama gave me the 6 million CFA to donate for support, particularly those who need some medical bills sorted out and who want to be assisted to go back. And then I've also observed that we need to provide electricity here. I've been told that there is a fee we need to pay to the local authorities, so I've asked the regional minister to quickly get us the invoice so that we can take care of that.
Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Open Society Foundations decries declining principles of democratic practice in Africa as the world marks International Democracy Day. University of Liberia reaffirms ban on student politics amid rising campus violence. Sahel State Alliance marks 2 years with mixed security outcomes, and Togo summons EU ambassador after European Parliament demand release of Abdul Aziz Goma. Still ahead in the news, we have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Let me take you to Benin at the moment, where authorities have announced that starting October 1, vehicles with opaque or tinted front windows will be banned. The announcement was made in a statement by the Ministry of Interior in response to the country's tense security climate. Sankule Janko reports.
From October 1, 2025, any vehicle circulating in Benin with a darkened windshield or front side windows will be systematically immobilized. In his statement, the Minister of Interior and Public Security, Alassane Seydou, stressed that the measure is intended to guarantee the safety of people and property. Specifically, it will be prohibited to drive with a windshield or front windows that do not allow clear visibility of the inside of the vehicle from the outside. Only certain exemptions already set out in law will remain applicable. Vehicle owners and drivers therefore have until September 30 to comply with the new regulation. After this deadline, the Republican police will launch large-scale operations to immobilize and remove from circulation any vehicles found in violation. In recent months, Benin has faced growing insecurity, particularly from armed terrorist groups operating in the north. Authorities say the new measure is part of broader efforts to restore order and safety ahead of the 2026 general elections.
And that's Sankole Janko with a report filed in by Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Sole.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
For the press review, let's join Usman Umar from Nigeria for the updates.
The Guardian newspaper reports a very blunt message from foreign affairs cycles. Nigeria will not be forced to follow world powers as it charts its foreign policy course. This is a stance underscoring Abuja's desire for an independent diplomatic posture in a shifting global order, quotes senior officials stressing Nigeria's right to pursue national interest in international forums. Staying with governance, Leadership newspaper says the federal government is taking Nigeria's campaign for a seat on the International Maritime Organization Council right to New York and, of course, to the United Nations, and then an effort that is aimed at securing stronger representation for Nigeria's shipping and maritime interest on the world stage. Vanguard also highlights a new Faith Foundation finding. Business startups in Nigeria have fallen for the third consecutive year, a trend analysts blame on persistent harsh economic conditions that are discouraging new entrepreneurs. The editorial pages call for targeted reforms to revive new business creation. Now, from the banking sector, the Nation newspaper reports that commercial banks raised 2.5 trillion naira in the first half of 2025 under recapitalization and funding drives. That's about $16.13 billion, a significant figure, as the central bank presses for stronger capital buffers in the sector. The development is being framed as both a show of confidence and a necessary step as lenders position for tougher regulatory expectations. Daily Trust newspaper carries grim front page coverage of a Lagos building collapse in Yaba. Rescuers have recovered bodies and saved survivors after a 3-story structure under construction gave way, underlining persistent concerns about building standards and enforcement in fast-growing urban centers. Those are the papers for today, as I now hand you back to the studios.
Thank you very much, Usman Umar, for the press review.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview this afternoon is about the world commemorating International Democracy Day with the aim of promoting democratic principles such as inclusion and freedom of expression. The United Nations is calling for stronger global commitment to democracy, warning that it is increasingly under attack from disinformation, political division, and shrinking civic space. This comes at a time when the Open Society Foundation decries declining principles of democratic practice in Africa in its latest report titled Analysis of the Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice in Africa. To help us appreciate the state of decline of democratic principles in the sub-region is Wadr's Advocacy Officer, Austin Aigbe.
For the namesake, yes, because there's a word called democracy. Democracy does exist by its word, but not largely in its principles and in its frameworks. Democracy is supposed to promote freedom and peace, which is the grand norm of democracy, the promotion of freedom and peace. And what does freedom mean? Freedom of human rights, people's assembly, and peace. Today's world has been marked by violence, including in countries that once had institutions whose special objective was to promote freedom and democracy around the world. That institution, on the coming of the administration, was the first to be attacked. Imagine that the global organization that promotes democracy was attacked. So what do you expect of countries where democracy was supposed to be installed. That's why you see around the world today, unless in countries like the Scandinavians, whether it's in Europe, is in the America, is in Africa, in Asia, democracy is just a form of words, not like its enforcement is in place.
Well, what are some of the biggest challenges, as you mentioned, facing democracy today, and how can international days like this inspire action to strengthen it?
International Day is just a reminder. It's like the day of the girl child, the day of the boy child, the day of climate change. These are just day of reminders. It's supposed to be a day for advocacy and let people taking actions. But those who frame this international day or international days doesn't even have the power to enforce the principle of those days. For instance, UN Day, International Day of Democracy. The UN doesn't really have any power to enforce it. The powerful arm of the UN, which is the Security Council, Russia is not a democracy. You can't say China is a democracy. The US is gradually snow diving. The US democracy is backsliding very fast. Is France a democracy? Can you say Germany? Well, if you say Germany and France is democracy, what about the two other countries, particularly Russia and China? And you know the way votes happen in the UN Security Council, it has to be unanimous. So if one country veto the decision, it is not enforceable. So at the end of the day, those countries who came up with democracy, International Day of Democracy, with this special arm, the Security Council, which will enforce set of those decisions, can't even do it, because if only Russia vetoed the decision to enforce democracy around the world, democracy cannot be enforced. Democracy is true. The dividends of it is what, the lack of the dividends of democracy is what is actually, let me speak for West Africa a bit, the absence of democratic dividends in West Africa is what is pursuing this violent negotiation across the area. What was the reason why the military took over in Burkina Faso? Poor governance, insecurity. In Niger, poor governance, insecurity. In Mali, poor governance, insecurity. In Guinea, poor governance, insecurity. I am not saying that other people who have been in power, like elsewhere in Cameroon, maybe in Uganda, who has been in power for so long, Equatorial Guinea, who has been in power for so long, has actually been able to improve the people's welfare and conditions. No, not even in Cameroon. But that's where democracy become important. And one of the bases for democracy is periodic elections. So most people who claim to be democratic now run periodic elections to call themselves democratic, whereas deep-seated in their mind, they are all autocrats.
And that's what Wadr's advocacy officer, Austin Aigbe. And in sports this afternoon, Emo Edith joins me with the latest. Emo, what's happening?
Yes, I do have a couple of stories on basketball and football. Well, let's start with the Egyptians winning its first FIBA AfroBasket on the 16 women's title on Sunday, defeating Cote d'Ivoire 66-54 in the final in Kigali. Undefeated throughout the tournament, the young Egyptians were able to impose their game against a valiant Ivorian side. Well, in football, this weekend, African footballers made headlines across Europe's top leagues. In Spain, Cameroonian teenager Carl Ete-Young scored on his Levante debut and was named man of the match. In Italy, Gambia's Aliou Fedari gave Sassuolo their first win of the season with a decisive goal against Lazio. In England, Mohamed Salah's late penalty secured victory for Liverpool, setting a new club penalty record and moving up the Premier League's all-time scorer list. While Senegal's Pape Matar Sarr scored for Tottenham in their 3-0 win over West Ham. In Germany, Nicolas Jackson impressed early with Bayern Munich, and in the Netherlands, Algeria's Anis Haji Moussa scored for Feyenoord but was later sent off, though his team held on to stay top of the league. And finally, coming in from Nigeria, the National Sports Commission says the Nigeria Football Federation will decide the fate of Super Eagles coach Eric Shell amid criticism over the team's poor World Cup qualifying campaign. The NSC chairman Chiodiko noted that while Nigeria has improved to 8 points under Shell, their qualification chances are slim, sitting third in Group C with 11 points, 6 behind leaders South Africa and 3 behind Benin.
Right, as a staunch Liverpool fan, you are sitting on top of the EPL with 12 points. You've won all your games. You're hoping
it's still very dicey because we have Arsenal to really push down the ladder before we can really be comfortable at the top as it is. So
right.
It's still very dicey.
Thank you very much, Imoedet, for being honest with that. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fali Luso and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our health program, Well Body with Imo Edit. I am Christopher Ticho. Good afternoon and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and